I have to say, in the spirit of full disclosure, I started my career at CBS many years ago. So when I will use superlatives to describe some of what you do, it's because I experienced it firsthand many moons ago, which was not too long before I met Armando. I've known Armando, we won't say how long, okay? Many, many years. I had the pleasure of meeting David by phone a couple of years ago, and I did some interviews. Just to give you some background, in the US, CBS, now you're going to have to correct me, top most watched network for 6 consecutive years and 11 out of the 12 past years. And this last season, it was #1 in 2 key demographics. Last year, you had the top drama, NCIS. You had the top new comedy, The Millers. Then, I mean, obviously 60 Minutes and everything else you have the top. But there's like top rated here, top rated there, most watched here, most watched there. So to start from that, obviously a vast majority of these shows come from your studio. So the first thing I wanted to ask is, since this is an increasingly interconnected world, if you want to take any show, oh, and I should say, this season that just started, you already have 3 of the top-rated shows in the new season. Scorpion, Madam Secretary, and the NCIS New Orleans. Okay, I did my homework. Taking any one of those 3 shows, if you want, as examples, give us an idea of how the 2 divisions work together. You produce, you help finance. How do you collaborate in deciding what gets greenlit and what doesn't get greenlit?
Greenlit's a little different. The way that the shows come about, in the case of NCIS New Orleans, it started years ago with Armando saying, can't we have another NCIS? We wanted to do it right. Candidly, we tried it a year ago and didn't quite get it right. So we went at it again. It was born out of an organic storyline that was just going to be a part of the original NCIS, the mothership, based on an actual guy in New Orleans. When we heard that story and decided, wow, that could be another show, my first call was to Armando. And I said, I think I found it, but let's talk about this. Let me, is this arena, is this the right time? We talk 2-3 times a day. It's an incredibly collaborative partnership and really valuable to me, and I trust his knowledge and experience in it, so you can elaborate.
Yeah, I mean, look, and I think as a credit to the process, as much as I, leading a global distribution operation, would take any permutation whatsoever of NCIS and CSI, and I think almost any permutation of NCIS and CSI would sell well around the world. The credit to our process, the franchises are important. So it had to be the right time, the right place, the right idea, an executable idea, and that's something that David and his group always does, and it's underestimated in the process. I mean, you can have the greatest idea for a pilot, have an incredible $12 million pilot, but what's more important than the pilot is the ability to execute on that concept for 13, 22 episodes, 5 years. And that kind of gets lost in what we do in terms of the ability to have people on staff, like David does at CBS Studios, to execute on these concepts. So, I mean, NCIS and CSI were always, for me, a no-brainer. I mean, it was just, our clients around the world always knew, we would talk about it often. It was just, it wasn't a question of if, it was just a matter of when.
And the when goes to, you want to do it right. So you don't want to, if I'm the one coming up with the idea, we're in trouble. So it needs to be organic to the creative process. In the case of New Orleans, we met a gentleman who does that for a living in New Orleans. So the story was born out of something authentic.
He was an actual NCIS
He was an actual NCIS agent. In the case of CSI, Cyber, candidly, we weren't going to do a spinoff in the same year that we were doing NCIS. It just, why not wait a year? And then we met a woman named Mary Aiken, who was a cyber forensic psychologist expert. She walked in and met with me and Nina Tassler, who's the head of the network, and just started telling stories, not with any intention of it even being a show. And we both looked at each other and said, oh my gosh, this is the new way to solve crimes. This is the new CSI. So we quickly jumped on that. But it was born organically.
And internationally, no problem in offering your buyers yet another of each franchise, right? They love the...
Well, everybody should be paying more.
Okay.
We should start with that concept. But no, look, NCIS was named last year as the world's most watched television drama. CSI before that has been named on multiple occasions as the world's most watched television drama. These are two incredibly valuable franchises that we nurture and care much about, and just as important, and I really can't emphasize this enough, we have great partners around the world who make our content successful. And you know, that gets lost in the shuffle. You just don't throw a show on a platform. It requires great marketing, great promotion,
right.
great instincts, everything to make it successful. And again, our partners around the world have done a great job of making this content successful.
I had never been here before, so one of the most gratifying parts of the last couple of days is meeting with the buyers who are as passionate and committed and intimately involved in these shows as I am. I mean, they are their shows, and that's so gratifying to hear, because you know they're taking care of it. It's our baby, and they're
right.
taking care of it just as much as we
right.
are.
But isn't part of their passion that they, like their viewers, have connected to some of these characters?
Yeah.
I mean,
ideally, that's the goal.
Right,
Yeah.
because we've had this conversation before. I mean, I've watched every NCIS episode from day one, even multiple times, and if I start seeing an episode for the third time or fourth time, I won't remember what the crime was, but I'll remember what happened to the characters.
Right.
That's pretty much common, right? I mean, it's the characters
That
that
is.
grab
I
you.
think you need, especially, you know, we have some shows that have been on the air a long time. You need to engage in these characters. You need to get to a point where you're smiling at what you know Gibbs's reaction to DiNozzo's
right.
whatever stupid thing he did is going to be.
Right.
So yeah, it's you want that audience engagement.
Now, CBS is known as the home to many genres, but certainly the procedural is one of your tried and true program types. Now, it's been famous and for your clients easy to program because it's an episode that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. But increasingly, you have updated the procedural by allowing certain story arcs to continue from, you know, maybe multiple episodes without ruining the dynamic that is so important for your clients, but satisfying maybe the American audience, because I think that also needs to be said. You always actually say it in your own words. When you are consulted on a show, what is the first thing you say, or one of the first things you say?
Make it good, and make it work in the United States. If a show's a failure in the US, obviously it has no chance of working outside the United States. But the success in the US at least increases the possibility and probability of it succeeding globally.
And looking at what's happening in the US, we have the cable channels, and we'll also get to Showtime in a minute, that are doing these very serialized dramas. So I don't know if you added these longer story arcs a little bit into response to the rest of the market, or if it was organic to your shows. But how do you strike that balance? Keep it a procedural that Armando can sell easily, and yet give a storyline that is maybe a little more engaging for the audience.
I think it happened organically on most of our shows. In the case of NCIS, you know, they created characters that you fell in love with, and the interaction and the banter between them in the office was oftentimes as important as the case. We never lost sight of having a beginning, middle, and end and a salient case to deal with, but what people were passionate about was, you know, that scene between Cody
and Ziva?
Yeah,
oh, God,
I mean,
yes.
you know, that's what sort of gets the audience to lean in a little more. For us, I think the big paradigm shift came with The Good Wife, which, you know, I think is the best show on television and just strikes that balance so well. And respected the audience in, we don't have to start a case at the beginning. We can start it in the middle. The audience is smart enough to figure it out. So it allowed a new way of storytelling that I think has sort of enabled our audience to look at our shows in a different way. We never really looked at our shows as just pure procedurals. There was always character development. It was just how much do you ratchet it up or down.
But the great thing, obviously, about procedurals is, first off, when they're successful, they play very well in the first telecast or first broadcast environment, then they repeat very well. And then in success, like franchise shows like NCIS and CSI that have so many episodes, Hawaii Five-0, now that we're in the fifth season, and so many of our other shows, these are shows that will live forever on different kind of distribution platforms around the world. I mean, we're still, and they become then valuable assets to our library. And we have shows in our library going back 50 years. I mean, Leslie talks often about the I Love Lucy example that we're still selling, or the Star Trek franchise, or so many different shows that are now 40 years old that still get seen around the world in various different ways. So, you know, these assets that you build, you know, it's that first exploitation, and then in success, it's that continued exploitation forever. I mean, 30 years from now, some goober is going to sit here talking about, you know, CSI and NCIS. I mean, you know, these are classic television programs that are, you know, again, going to live forever.
All right, NCIS, CSI, and many of your procedurals go for the 22 to 24 episode each season. CBS last summer started something new. On a broadcast network, you premiered new programming that the broadcast networks scripted tended not to do, and you had Under the Dome. Yes, based on a Stephen King novel, but it had extraordinary success. Besides the success in ratings in the US and then in your sales, it had an innovative financing model, right? That got sold to a digital platform before it aired on CBS?
No, after.
After. How did that work, and how is that dynamic?
Well, look, it was interesting. It was an interesting process that, you know, now in success is nice to talk about. But when the script started floating around, David and I started talking about it, and I simply thought it was just another project that was in development. And David mentioned, well, you know, we're trying to make an event series for the summer. And some of the challenges we had was like, okay, so how do we explain to our client base that we're going to do a big budget event series over the summer where stereotypically you have repeats, right. You have reality programming. You know, you didn't, you know, networks, the U.S. network broadcast, the U.S. broadcasters typically don't put, you know, their best content on in the summer. So, you know, we had our hands full communicating to our clients what the concept of this event series was. We were one of the first, I guess the first, to do something like this. The reaction was very favorable from everyone around the world, from all of our broadcast partners around the world. And we were off and running. And it was, the series obviously was very successful in the United States, and this first season was, it's rare that there's success across the board, but most of the broadcasters around the world were incredibly successful with the first year of Under the Dome.
And from a creative standpoint, how was that?
It was easy because he had to do all the heavy lifting. For us, it was too good a project not to do. Yet it was serialized, it was expensive, it was, you know, didn't necessarily fit in the normal, which isn't normal anymore, season that a network had, yet we had to do it. And so the challenge was, where do we put it and how do we pay for it? So at that point, that was, I turned to Nina and said, you figure out where to put it. And turned to Armando and figure out how to pay for this.
So you just
yeah,
delegate
really
to
well.
others.
It works really well.
In that case, I was lucky I had good partners. I could figure it out.
But you talk again the difference between serialized and procedural. So you have this highly serialized show, and the serialized shows do tend to perform well in a digital environment. So that's when the digital players come into play and kind of make that model work.
Right, absolutely. Now, you repeated Under the Dome for a second season, and this summer, Extant came about. that's a co-production, am I correct? Or is that a...
We do it along with Under the Dome with Amblin.
And that
Television.
also was successful, and it was well met.
Well, they had created the model
Right.
or we had created the model on Under the Dome. So again, we got our hands on the script extant, which everybody wanted and was bidding on. And because of our relationship with Amblin and Steven Spielberg and the success of Under the Dome, it became kind of a no-brainer that it come to us and to the network, and we did it again.
And since CBS is known internationally for the 22, 24-hour season, how has the market reacted to a shorter? It's 13 episodes, right?
Look, I think generally pretty well. Look, there are challenges and opportunities in all different types of programming. And certainly, you know, a 13-episode story arc, you know, I think generally speaking, broadcasters prefer longer 22 episodes order so they can kind of sink their teeth into the marketing and promotion and, you know, play it out during a longer period of time over the year. But there are opportunities in doing 13 episodes story arcs as well. And I know in the case of MCs, for example, they broadcast, actually it was last night, they had extant, and they do it in 3-hour blocks.
Right.
So they had 3 hours of extant, not sure how they get that 13th hour in, but across the board. So, you know, there's challenges and opportunities in every form of programming.
But linear channels also have a need to create events from time to time, right? And don't these lend themselves rather well to that?
Well, certainly,
Yeah.
and certainly in the case of Under the Dome, you know, this was an incredibly marketable title and promotable title. And then you go to extant with Holly Berry, who's, you know, a huge star. So having her involved in this project created, again, another big marketing and promotional opportunity.
Now, next summer, there's another one coming up.
Next summer is going to be fantastic.
Tell us.
It's called Zoo. It's based on a James Patterson book that posits the question, what if animals around the world could communicate with each other? And in this case, they can, and they're pissed. They're angry. So what happens? And that's essentially what the series is going to be about. It is a very Hitchcockian, extremely suspenseful, taut, compelling storyline. The script is terrific. Written by the law firm of Applebaum, Nemec, Pinkner, and Rosenberg, who are terrific writers, and comes from James Mangold and Kathy Conrad, who are non-writing producers on it. So big auspices behind this thing, and it's going to be fun.
And is this another show that has a digital component to it? Does the sale of this show also have it? And tell me, beyond these 3 limited series, what opportunities are you seeing in the digital world? I imagine as many as you would like to create.
Oh, it's keeping us busy. Look, digital, the entrance, the new entrance, or the relatively new entrance in the marketplace, players like Netflix, Amazon, the variety of different digital players that have existed for years and are new entrants to the marketplace locally. You know, obviously for anybody who is a distributor of content, it's a good thing. It's more platforms to place content in an overly simplistic way. The trick in all of this is trying to figure out how to do this in a way which doesn't cannibalize your core business, which is incremental, not taking money from one pocket and putting it into the other. And in the case of successful long-running content, again, doesn't cannibalize and doesn't hurt that content. And, you know, anybody who's in the distribution business right now can't help but be excited about the opportunities that there are out there as a result of digital in general. Now, you know, it also does create a lot of angst, and those of us who have been around the business long enough have seen, you know, anytime new distribution methods are introduced, whether you go way back and cable first started, then satellite, then VCRs, then DVRs, there was always angst created by technology. And usually, with time, the angst gets reduced, and the dust settles, and there's some sort of equilibrium in the marketplace, and usually everyone kind of coexists with everybody. So it's an exciting time.
Keeps you on your toes, I bet, though. So
it keeps you on your toes.
It seems like you still have the easier job. Has your job been impacted less by technology than his?
He definitely has an easier job.
Probably. I mean, for us, you know, the more platforms there are, the better. I mean, we create content. There's always going to be the need for a story, no matter what kind of platform it's playing on. So, you know, I'm lucky in that that's the game that I'm in. Right. It's just making it.
But I would imagine as a series becomes more successful, its costs increase by nature. Mm-hmm. You're obviously running a profitable business, so you must be, either you're bringing in loads of money or you're finding ways of containing your costs better. Can you give examples of how you can deliver all of that quality that you deliver on the screen, but still, you know, keep your costs somewhat contained?
I think it's hard to generalize, and I think the answer to that question is it's a little bit of both. He is bringing in loads of money and more money, and we're constantly examining how to be more cost efficient, how to produce more efficiently. It depends on the show as to how you do that. The key to any successful show always starts with the showrunner. If you don't have a good showrunner, and that's not just a good writer, this is the manager of the team. This is who can put it all together and knows how to take a script that may be too expensive and sort of trim it back and massage it back to make it affordable without taking away what makes it creatively viable.
Right.
So.
Right. We journalists are number crazy. We love numbers, but I've been in the business long enough to know that there are no numbers if there aren't relationships first. And I thought first we could talk about I've had the thrill of speaking to a lot of your showrunners, a lot of your stars. They are, unless the stars are tremendous actors, which they are, but there's a passion that comes through and an allegiance that comes through to working for you. Talk to me a little bit about the relationships you have with your ongoing talent, and what does the studio represent for people who you're looking for and you want to come in and join the studio?
That's nice to hear. I think that, and I think this is true of most studios, actually. The art comes first. The business will be sorted out by people that are smart like him. So we recognize that everybody we're dealing with is an artist, and they're painting a painting. So, you know, we sort of respect that and respect what they're trying to do. Now, we know what's going to work for whatever network it is that we're either selling it to or, you know, broadcasting it on. So we can help, and our experience can help. But I think it's that sort of mutual respect of, you know, the art and the business have to be choreographed. So that's in large part, I think, what enables us to do well. It's also, I mean, we're fortunate in that we have had shows that stay on the air. It's just as important for us to get the 16th season pickup of CSI as it is to get a new show on the air. I mean, it works if these shows stay on the air. We've been really lucky. We put a lot of time and money and investment and energy into making sure that every episode is the best episode it can be. And I think, you know, so you work with people long enough, you know,
right.
You become one.
Armando, obviously relationships is a bread and butter of what you do too. You must have many with many broadcasters around the world.
Depends on, you know, what's going on at the moment. But yeah, look, you know, again, what we were saying, been doing this a long time. I consider myself the luckiest guy in the world to do what I do. I still have a huge passion. I mean, the global television business is just a fascinating business, one that's increasingly complicated, but still incredibly just buoyant. And it is a relationship business. And we have relationships and output arrangements, volume arrangements with some clients that we've had for many, many years. And because it's not about just, oh, let me just sell you this show. It's it's a constant relationship on an ongoing basis that's a give and take on both sides. And we're very proud of our relationships and proud of our partners, and it's a great business.
But and those relationships must come into play as, take any territory, as there are new channels, new OTTs, the windowing becomes more complex, right? So
well, I mean, windowing is part of what that's what we do. I mean, again, people focus on like, oh, we sold a show in this territory to broadcaster X. But ultimately what we do, and again with successful content, is so much of what we do is about windowing. And now with the introduction, and I shouldn't say introduction, but with the digital platforms, it's just another form of windowing. And in markets where we don't have pre-existing commitments, pricing is going to determine how windows take place or exclusivity takes place. And so it becomes just a function of pricing. And there's a lot of content. I mean, we walked around a little bit yesterday. There's a ton of content. There's a ton of American content. But we always feel that we're in a premium content space. And I should mention, because obviously the focus here, we're talking about CBS, but we've got CBS, we have the CW content, we have the Showtime content, and all this content. Again, the benefit on what we do at CBS, every focus, because we're a broadcaster, and Leslie Moonves never lets us forget we're a broadcaster, and our job is to try to attract as a big and wide as audience as possible. That kind of broad content tends to be the kind of content that our clients, our broadcasters around the world are looking for. CW tends to be younger skewing content. In the case of a number of different shows on CW, that does thrive in a more broader environment. And Showtime is the kind of content that's in very limited supply. There's not much of it. You've got HBO with their commitments and their channels around the world, and Showtime and Stars. And the Showtime content obviously thrives incredibly well in a premium pay environment, whether linear or digital. And so it's going back to all these different distribution pipes. There's almost a different pipe. There's a pipe out there for almost every genre of content.
And you have been broadening the studio's portfolio. You no longer only produce for CBS.
Correct.
You tell us a little bit about the other.
Well, it's important for us to do that, to be a major studio and to attract the type of talent we want. We can't just sell to CBS, CW, and Showtime, our sister companies. We have to, enable, the project to be able to live where it belongs. And some projects are more right for ABC or Fox or USA or Netflix or Amazon or wherever the right buyer is. We're also a little bit of a victim of our own success. We successfully have filled up this shelf space at CBS. Like I've said, with the long-running shows that we have, there started to be less and less space. So it was imperative that we're a content creator. That's what we do. That's our job. So we need to create as much as we possibly can that makes sense, and that requires going outside, which we love. It's fun.
You mentioned the clip before on NCIS between Cody DiPablo and Michael Weatherly, and Cody left to the great dismay of many of his fans, but she will be coming back on a show that is premiering next year. Do you want to tell us about that? She is. She's coming back to as the star of a 4-hour miniseries, Dove Keepers, based on a book by Alice Hoffman. It is the story of Masada, seen through the eyes of a few women. It stars Cody DiPablo and Sam Neill, and it's exciting. I mean, it was exciting to be able to bring Cody back into the family. I mean, nobody ever really leaves our family when they leave. I'm still very close with Josh Charles, who I one day hope to bring back to work with us again. So it's fun. That's another thing. Since when did a broadcast network show kill off a main character? We're talking about The Good Wife now, if any of you don't know, and the rather stunning episode last year when a major character was killed. That's not something that usually happened on broadcast television. Was that a tough decision to make?
No. It really wasn't.
Okay, so you let him do the work and you kill off your characters. So you
right.
know what's going on here.
No, I mean, Josh was good enough. His deal was up the year before. He was good enough to give us 15 more episodes, which is his prerogative to leave it. You know, he lived up to his contract. And the writers came up with this incredible storyline, which, you know, everybody saw. And when I heard it, it was like, whoa, you can't do that. But then it was like, well, why not? He's not coming back. This is true and organic to what happens in life. And that was their point, that sometimes you don't get a happy ending. Sometimes things just happen. And they were more concerned less about the shock value of the moment in the episode. They were actually more thinking about the next batch of episodes after and beyond. How does that affect somebody? What ripple effect does an event like that have?
Right.
I mean, Robert and Michelle King and that writing staff are brilliant, and my job is basically to stay out of their way and let them do what they do.
You mentioned Leslie Moonves, a man who in the international community I've often heard referred to as a guy with a Midas touch when it comes to programming. I mean, he is a program guy through and through, correct? Tell us a little bit about your relationship. What's it like working with him?
It's great. I mean, you know, I've known and worked with Leslie for 28 years.
That's right, because prior to CBS, you were with him at Warner Brothers.
We were at Lorimar, and then Warner Brothers, and then CBS.
And I'm 15 years.
And he's the rookie.
And I'm the rookie on the team.
Wow.
You know, I mean, we joke that there is no job within the company that Leslie can't do better than the person that is doing it. I truly believe that. So we all have tremendous respect for him, and despite what, you know, legend may be, he's incredibly collaborative and respectful of our opinions. And it's very much a team. I mean, we're very much we've been together a long time, all of us. I mean, there's quite a few of us.
Could you give some examples of the type of input that he has? I mean, yesterday you were mentioning and please mention the new shows that you have too. There are some great new shows coming up, right? Or that have started already.
Yeah, Madam's Secretary, Scorpion, and NCIS New Orleans are all off to a fantastic start, so hopefully they'll continue. But Leslie's intimately involved in, you know, candidly, the script development. I mean, his passion is also casting. You know, I tell a funny story on Jane the Virgin. The star of that show is Gina Rodriguez, and we were in debate about came down to the wire between Gina and another girl, and I took sort of the audition to Leslie and said, what do you think? And I really love your opinion here. And he just looked at me and said, like, this is a slam dunk. This girl's a superstar, which, you know, if you read the reviews, he was right. He does have that sort of Midas touch.
Yeah, look, I'd add, look, he's a great boss. He's a great mentor. When you're fortunate enough to be close to him, he's a great friend. I say this often, you know, he gets it, whatever it is. And there isn't really a time that I don't go into his office kind of seeking some advice or seeking some direction on, I mean, an issue that could be near and dear to him on something related to talent, or on some issue, someplace, you know, some place far away, some international marketplace. And there's never a time where I don't walk out of his office with kind of good, clear-cut advice. And, you know, the other benefit that we have, and you mentioned, you know, how the international community feels about him, you know, with his background and he's passionate about what we do. And he's passionate about television and the production of good television and production of content, and that filters down through our entire organization. And ultimately, you know, he's the CEO of this huge conglomerate, but he's still a broadcaster and a programmer at heart, and that benefits everything we do in terms of the creation of content and the content that we supply to everyone around the world. So, you know, I think we're incredibly fortunate, and especially when you consider all the responsibilities that he has.
All right. Well, I would love to continue, but I'm afraid our time is up. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Will you please join me in thanking Armando and David?